Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of A Cup of Joe. It is the 30th of March, 2021, and it is a wonderful day outside. If you're not outside walking, you should be, like I did. Yeah, I did. I got out there today. Um, it took me an hour, got around the lake, about 3.3 miles. Fell once. It seems to be a common occurrence when I start walking again. Fat Manly needs to learn how to walk. I'll do a weigh-in tomorrow to kind of see where I'm at, and we'll probably do that once a week on probably on Mondays or Tuesdays. We'll see, just to kind of track progress. And in any case, I plan on actually dieting starting today, as far as watching what I'm eating, how much I'm eating, and then taking in, trying to cut out sweets and everything else. So, pardon my appearance. I did just get back. I actually started recording this, got about 20 minutes in, and realized I didn't have my mic turned on. So, yay. So, here we are. But it gives me a chance to kind of go back and, really reevaluate what I was talking about, anyways. Coming off of yesterday, Kat, you had mentioned about, sticking to your goals, and you were eating some cheesecake. Hey, look. You don't need to limit yourself. Okay, let me put it this way. Limit yourself how much you're taking in, right? Instead of eating the whole thing of cheesecake, just have a piece, have a slice, right? That's kind of the way that I look at it. Like, I think cutting yourself completely off from things isn't necessarily the way to do it, because all it's going to do is you're just going to fall. So yeah, don't feel bad. Just keep doing it. I know you're on your feet a lot, so, there's that. So yeah, and that's where we're going to take into today's. So what I prefaced this yesterday, and I had stated that, what I was going to start doing was telling you, hey, this is who I am, right? It gives you a better idea of where I've been, what I've experienced, may lend some credibility to what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to do, because, I have an idea of where people are at. Like, I've been in a lot of places, I've struggled with a lot of things. I may not have ever struggled with drugs, I may not have ever struggled with alcohol, but I definitely have my struggles with addiction, with other things. So I've been in a lot of places, I've seen a lot of things. So a lot of this I just come from, I'm not an expert, but I have a lot of experience in some things. So my goal is to try to be like, hey, there's never a time where you're down and out, right? Where you can come back from things. So yeah, and that's where we're gonna start. So, as you know, my name is Joe, and I was born on March 13th, 1982, at Luke Air Force Base in Glendale, Arizona. So, I had some pictures of family and of childhood. These were all it looks like these were all developed in '84, around September or so. So let's start here. Okay. This is the earliest picture I believe I have of myself. That is my dad and I. Looks like this was September 1982. That's in our kitchen in Arizona. I remember it didn't really change much in the entire time that we owned that house, which was up until a few years ago when my dad passed, so we sold it. So, it's a picture of my mother and I. Not sure where. My guess is probably somewhere. That's really specific, isn't it? This is my father and I. Another picture of my mother. I actually do like this picture. I remember those shoes and that outfit quite clearly. There's a picture of me as well. I remember. What's funny is I remember a lot of these toys because we had them for quite a while. Another picture of me. That's in by the hallway. And what's funny is like none of this has changed in pretty much the 30 some odd years that I was alive anyways. Another picture of my mother and I want to say that's probably the petrified forest. My dad really wanted to get me into golf. So we had a lot of these like little putt-putt things that my dad had gotten me. And so he said I had a great swing. Well, whatever. I should really maybe get into golfing. It's a good way to walk around. It is good exercise, so yeah, there is that. I believe this is at Carlsbad Canyon. This is my father and I. The times you do see my father have hair, it was a toupee. So, and that's it. So judging by those pictures, it's like, oh wait, I do have one more. My mistake. So let's say this: I am the oldest of 3 other brothers. Between my mother and my father. Now I do have an older sister from my dad's previous marriage. Her name is Teresa, and this was that picture. This is actually the one we used to have hung up in the hallway. So, yeah. Judging by those pictures, you think that hey, it was a cool, a good life. You're happy, you look like you're happy child, everything else, and by all accounts, sure, it was there was good times, most definitely, but then there's a lot of bad. So when I was recording this previously, I was all over the place. I'm just going to start from where I actually remember when things, like the first vivid memory I have. And that was my sister was making dinner for us. And she was making Stouffer's pot pies. And what she would do, she would put our initials in with a fork and then put it in the oven. There was a phone call that came through. It was from my father. And next thing you know, my father was rushing out of the house. It turns out what happened, my mother was involved in a serious car accident. On Grand Avenue. Those of you who live in Arizona, or at least in Phoenix and Glendale and Peoria, Grand Avenue is a 5-way intersection. I believe it was Grand Avenue. I want to say it was right before my birthday, because I remember it was either that or before sometime. It might have been before Christmas. I don't remember. So I remember my mom was out shopping. In either case, it was raining. She totaled the car. So what ended up happening, I found this out much later in life, was my mom had tried to basically kill herself. Light was red. She just floored it right into the back of somebody else's car. The thing is this was back in early, I would have been transitional first grade, so probably late 80s, so the cars back then were a lot bigger. So she basically floored it and ran into the back of somebody. Fractured her skull, totaled the car. Mom was never the same after that. In either case, a few months later, she was at home, and I was at this point I was in transitional first grade. So, what's transitional first grade? Well, for those now it's not so much a thing, but you know they stated that I wasn't socially prepared for first grade, so they put me in a transitional class to get me socially prepared. And I remember I was at school. I got pulled out of school by a male and a female, and they were agents of CPS, which is Child Protective Services. Now, in my mind, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. They took me to the nurse's office. They made me strip down, which is weird, but I was being a little douchebag. I wasn't being cooperative. But because they started asking me questions like, well, does your dad hit you? Did your dad do this? Did your dad do this? I did have some markings. I think I had some on my face. I don't really remember. I remember my dad saying that, well, a magnet had fallen or a pan had fallen off something and hit me or something. I don't really remember. In either case, they made little transitional first grade me go from the school to home. Like, they wanted me to guide them. Like, no. So they're getting frustrated with me there. I'm like, I don't know. It's by a wall. It's just by an airport. Anyways, we arrived at the house. My dad was actually in a bathrobe, and he was trying to record a fight or something. I don't really remember what he was trying to record. In either case, I think my sister would have been still there, because I think this is at the time that my sister left, and this was the last time I would see my sister outside of visits out to Ohio. But I don't really remember seeing my sister again until when she was engaged, and she brought my brother-in-law down to visit us and to meet us, and I was institutionalized at the time, so we'll get into that later. But in any case, they took us and they put us into a halfway home. I don't remember, it was with my mom and my brothers. Here's the thing, I don't remember, because my mom was pregnant when she got into the car accident. With which brother, I don't fully remember. If it was if it was Christopher, if it was Brian, I seriously don't recall. In either case, thank God that I didn't lose one of my brothers that day. So, but they put us in a halfway home, and honestly, when it comes to abuse, like, I feel I was abused there more than prior to me being at home. So that's just whatever. After a while, we were sent back home. I don't see here's things are going to get murky. My dad had moved out, I believe. He had, it was a court order, I think. So it was just mom and us for a little bit, and then my dad ended up moving in, and then my mom moved out. Like, CPS was in and out of our lives, going forward, right? Like, for quite a while, like up until probably about when I was in 7th grade. So, I mean, this was a good 7-8 years where they were involved in our life in one way or another. So, in either case, there was a lot of abuse. There was never any sexual abuse, at least on the male side, but as far as my sister goes, like, that's her story to tell, not mine. So, and there's a lot that happened. My sister remembers a lot more about the early times than I do, but and prior to her leaving, but it wasn't good. And it's probably good I don't remember a lot of it. There were, when my mom had moved out is when it was where I really start remembering. Like, there was times where, we would come home and I'd be afraid to even go home. We had a red card, green card system for first grade, and I got a lot of red cards. So, and I was afraid to go home because I knew what would happen. There are times where we broke a McDonald's toy, right? And we would end up having to stand in the corner for hours with soap in our mouths for whatever reason. Like, it was just things like that. We didn't sort the Legos properly. I remember that time, right? Like, I didn't sort Legos properly. Next thing I know, my dad comes busting into my room, and he had like this little plastic chair, and he broke the chair with the cane, and then basically proceeded to beat me, and then he was on top of me. It was basically like, I can kill you right now if I wanted to. So to preface, and I want to make it clear that my dad was going through a lot of stuff too, and I'm not giving him the I'm not justifying his actions, because there's no excuse for abuse, right? But he had multiple back surgeries. He was in a lot of pain. He was on a lot of medication. So there are underlying things there. So, but in any case, I'm just gonna leave it with this: is that there was one in particular that is in my mind more so than any of the others, and that was, we had come home from a church social. I was playing in the dining room, and I'd seen a book of my father's, and in it was, I don't know if it was talking about like occult symbols or what have you. In any case, there was a peace symbol, and so I had drawn that. He had these work gloves, and I had drawn the peace symbol on the cardboard part, and he asked me if I heard the door open. He comes charging down the hallway. He's like, "Did you draw this?" And blah blah blah. And talked about how being an upside down cross, all this other stuff. And I'm like, "No, I didn't draw it." Well, I did. For the next 2 hours, I was beaten. My head went. He put my head to the wall. In fact, in my parents' bedroom, he put a picture over it, but you could see where my head had gone through the wall. Like, he beat me with a belt. And this went on for a really long time. And in our bedroom, we had my brother Timothy and I shared a room, and then my brother Chris and Brian shared a room. But in our bedroom, we had these wooden bunk beds, and it was hardwood, and my dad slammed my head against that multiple times. And I remember I passed out. Like, I checked out. I had enough. And what's funny is, knowing what I know now, is probably I should have been taken to the hospital, because I'm more likely I had a concussion. So but then I remember my dad waking me up and giving me Tylenol, and then apologizing and everything else. And that's always how it went, right? That's always how it went. Was there'd be the abuse, and then the I'm sorry phase. Here's ice cream, here's this, and the funny thing is that, like, during that time, is some of the most fondest memories I have of my dad were during that time too. And that's what's so weird in my head when I talk about these things, is because, like, that time Dad was just Dad. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff that Dad did, like, and but it's just like, at the same time, like, the darkness is there too, and it's hard. In any case, my mom ended up moving back in. Well, there's a time actually in third grade, and this is, there's a time in third grade I remember I had worked really hard to get. I love school, at this point. Like, I really wanted to do well. I was writing a lot. Um, and I was struggling with math and things like that. And in third grade, it was Mr. Michaels, and he was one of my favorite teachers. Well, it's like, one of my favorite teachers. And I remember because my dad had a '76 Oldsmobile, and I had gotten a B or a C. I don't remember. But he wasn't happy about that. For me, I was trying my hardest. And he just, the whole way home, he was just slamming my head against a car door, just constantly. I stopped caring about school at that point. Nothing was ever going to be good enough. And I challenge you guys as parents. We can get frustrated with our kids. Abuse is never an answer. I mean, discipline works on different kids, and you need to find out what works for yours, right? But you don't ever want to push your kid. You cannot even discipline them, but that can also be detrimental to them as well. There needs, it's our job to put them on the right path. But the problem is that when you go overboard, you can end up just, they don't give a fuck anymore. And that's where I was. Like, I hit fourth grade, and I checked out. I didn't care. And I'm finding that out with my kid right now. Like, I don't, my kid's had a pretty good life, for all things considered, with everything that's happened, but he just doesn't care. He's a lot like me, and it's funny because there's no abuse there. So what happened? There's some of it I blame on the school system, because, like, at this point, he's just like, well, I can just do whatever and I can pass. They're not going to fail me. But, and I'm trying to convey to him that, look, it's important, man. You need to get through school. Like, I get that you don't like it. I get that you hate it. But I want to encourage him, not. And the thing is, I have lost my cool with him. I've never hurt him, though. I've done things I'm not proud of, and we'll get into that later. But, I love him with my whole heart. And all I want is the best for him. I want him to succeed. And the thing with my dad is, I know, looking back now at the things that happened, there were things I wish I would have listened to him on, right? Like, my dad was trying to... Some of the messages my dad were giving me were right. The way he went about telling me those messages worked. But at the same time, if I'd actually listened to him, I'd probably be in a better place than I am right now, so... But that's neither here nor there. But anyways, fast forward, he had hit my... There came a point at which my brother Brian, he beat Brian with a belt, and his leg was black and blue. And we actually went to church, and I remember all of a sudden there was a Sun and Pizza party at church, and his mom and dad weren't there. We were actually being kept in the back of the church. We had a small church with maybe 30, 40 people. And I remember also we had this sudden, church social, and come to find out, my mother and father's best friend, the pastor, and the pastor's wife confronted my father, and they called the police. And the police came and basically took him to jail. That's honestly when the abuse, for the most part, stopped. Well, the physical portion of that. But I remember holding my father's jacket that day, the jacket that he wore to church, and just crying. it's my dad. You know, I don't want to lose my dad. You know, I love my dad. You know, and that's the thing. You know, when I gave the eulogy at my dad's funeral, you know, the chick he was seeing at the time didn't like it, but I don't really give a shit. I don't even know her, so she didn't have to live with this. I don't, you know, I forgave my father for the things that have happened, you know. But what I had said was, like, when I look back in my life, you know, for me, the darkness, you know, the bad almost outweighs the good. But the thing is there came a change at some point where Dad really did try to make amends. And it's funny because he flip-flopped back and forth, but it will never erase what happened. But, you know, when you forgive, you can move forward. I don't think my sister ever got the closure that she wanted. I pushed for it. You know, I pushed my father for it. And we'll get into that story later. But my dad was a complicated, simple man at the same time. So, but we'll end that here. We'll pick up in the story here, you know, after my dad went to jail and kind of what happens in the intervening years. But I wanted to preface that, like, I come from an abusive household. I don't wear that as a badge, like, hey, look at me, I was abused. But there's a lot of things that happened. A lot of things that happened during this time. Like, a lot of my sexual deviancy started during this point, too. Like, in first grade. I mean, my attraction towards death, you know, out of nowhere. You know, as early as first grade. So, this is, you know, as far as my addiction to, you know, pornography and things like that, it's probably when it started was then. You know, and... You know, and that's the thing, is that, like, as parents, too, you know, we're supposed to protect our children from those things. And, you know, we look at the movies and stuff we watch today and the shows, and it's like, oh, well, my kid can watch that. You know, the thing is, though, is we don't really know how it affects. Like, I remember watching Rambo and things like that when I was first grade. You know, just... I don't think it settled. It didn't have the correct effect on my head, so... In any case, though, we'll get into. Well, like I said, this is gonna be a pretty. There's gonna be quite a few videos on this, but I hope you guys bear with me, and because I want you to know that while we may not have had the same experiences, I have had experiences. You know, I've been there, and my goal and what I want to show is that we can be better. We can rise above these things. We don't need to have these things hold us down. At the same time, we can't blame others for the way we are, because ultimately, while our experiences do shape us, we're ultimately the ones that make the decisions that affect us. You know, I can't blame my dad for the position that I'm in now. You know, or I can't blame my dad for the things that happened, the choices that I made, because no. Now, was there an effect in how my thought process? Maybe. You know, but I can't blame others for my choices. And I think we live in a time now where I think people feel entitled. We're in a victim. Everyone wants to play the victim, you know, and nobody wants to take, you know, we want to blame the banks for us not being able to spend our money properly. We want to blame the banks for our credit card debt. Like, do I think the banks, you know, could be a little bit better than that? Sure, but it's ultimately you're the one who chose to use a credit card. You know, we don't want to take responsibility for our actions, and we always want to play the victim. And trust me, I've fallen into that hole too, right? But I think when you start to realize that when you take responsibility for your actions, when you take responsibility for the things that you have done, you'll find that there's freedom to be found there, and that you can move forward from that. And that's where it starts. You need to start there. Take responsibility. Say, today I choose to take responsibility for the things that I've done. The things that have happened in the past may have shaped me, but I can be a better person starting now. I can change the way I think starting now. There's a famous saying about, you tell a lie loud enough and long enough, people will start to believe it. Well, here's the thing. I'm not saying lie to yourself, but maybe it's like, hey, if you're not happy, be like, hey, I'm gonna be happy. I'm happy with the way this is, right? And you keep just telling yourself that, and eventually you'll start to believe it. You'll start to live it. It's easier said than done. But the thing is that thought, is going to start thinking about it. Like, hey, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna change, and really put yourself in that frame of mind and push forward. And that's where things are going to change. So that's what I want to show everybody here. So yeah, we'll pick up with my story next time with after my dad goes to prison, and then the intervening time when it was just my mom and we brothers. And yeah, well, friends, stay awesome. Keep working towards your goals. Keep striving. Keep going. Sorry for my appearance today. I turned 39. Now I got, I'm drying out. Got bags under my eyes, breaking out. I get these back from a walk. I don't know. I'm a mess. But anyways, guys, I love you all. Stay positive. Put a smile. Keep trying to go for your goals. Set small ones. Enjoy some cheesecake. So, anyways, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and close this cup of Joe. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, may all your stories be glad ones, and may your roads be smooth and short. Until next time, friends, I'll see you tomorrow.